Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
I think let's
सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। श्री गीता ध्यानम्। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धि पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्रा येन त्वया भारततैल्यपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवैत्रेकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सस्तुतिर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोतीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरननदी कैवर्तककेशवः पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटं नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितम् लोके सज्जनषट्पदैरहरहः पीपीयमानं मुदा भूयात् भारतपङ्कजं कलिमला प्रध्वंसिन श्रेयसे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयति गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम्। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणीन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुवन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदे गायन्ति यं सामगाः। ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः.
Hari Om. So, see, Upasana is not there in today's satsang. I think the first since we started. So, the first time she's not there. And looks like people were joining only for Upasana. Because today, look at how few people have joined. You know, and yeah, so it looks like only Upasana, not the satsang, it was Upasana.
I'm the proxy. I'm under Upasana's login. And I'm
No,
seeing
you are-
my name there as Upasana, and I'm like, oh.
You can't be you may have additional proxy for Upasana, but without Sarika, satsang is not happening. So you're invaluable too, you know. But yeah, see, look at that. I was amazed, you know. This is the first time we are starting with under 10 people. But of course, Petra and Shraddha are here. They've come here in person, and Anupama is on the way, stuck in traffic. But I thought she dialed in. I saw her. Yeah, there she is. But yeah, this is Upasana magic, you know. Upasana means devotion. So without devotion, nothing is there. Okay, Hari Om, we'll get started. So Bhagwan, and by the way, sorry, welcome Jyoti. We have a new joiner today. Thanks to Radhika, and
Thank you.
to have you. So Bhagwan has described gunas extensively in the context of jnana or knowledge, karma or action, and karta or the actors, the doers, or the knowers, you know, the triad as we have studied. And then buddhi or understanding, and dhriti or fortitude, and sukham or happiness. So sukham we are going to do today. Sukham we are going to study today only. And understanding our nature, that is our guna, with the goal to make spiritual progress, and thereby making changes to our gunas is very critical for seekers. And it's also extremely difficult. It's not an easy thing to do. Living in this world with all its, you know, the stress, the enticements that draw us towards various things, the distractions that are there in our day-to-day life, and at the same time understanding ourselves, and understanding ourselves through our gunas, and then making appropriate changes as required, appears near impossible at times. Almost like, you know, how can one do this? At the same time, when we actually get it done, when we are able to make even a minuscule of a difference, there is tremendous satisfaction and actually happiness also. And I'm sure all of us have experienced this, you know, both the scenarios where we say that it's impossible to, you know, make any change in our nature, and also when we do and we feel good about the change that we have made. I still continue to experience both these aspects. So, you know, a personal story of mine, thinking of all these difficulties, you know, in terms of being able to change in the presence of the distractions in the real world, in samsara, with all the external quote-unquote disturbances, and there having to change myself. I actually asked my Guruji, Swami Advayanandaji, as well as at that time the head of Chinmaya Mission, Swami Tejomayananda, if I could enroll in the residential 2-year Vedanta course. You know, and in that Vedanta course, students completely withdraw from worldly life. You know, they are completely out of worldly life. They follow an extremely rigorous schedule, and at the end of 2 years, they qualify as a brahmachari. And after they qualify as a brahmachari, they have the choice to continue serving, and then over a number of years, they quote unquote become a sannyasi. You know, but both the saints, both Swami Advayanandaji, my guru, and Swami Tejomayananda, they refused permission to me, saying that I have duties to fulfill in my life. So I may just, you know how Arjuna felt when Krishna told him that he cannot run away from the battlefield. You know, in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, we saw Arjuna was ready to discard everything, go to the Himalayas and start pursuing meditation. And Krishna admonished him and told him, no, he cannot do that. So when you have duties to fulfill and at the same time you have, experiencing the aspect of changing one's own gunas to be able to grow spiritually. Remember, seekers, we are talking about seekers, spiritual seekers. So the goal is to grow spiritually. That's the entire reason why we are undertaking this kind of a journey. But at the same time, Swamiji gave me permission not only to, share the learning that I got from him through the course that I underwent under him with all of us, but also to add some flavor of my own. That's a big privilege, actually. And I'm extremely thankful for that, because through all of you, I'm only reinforcing my own learning and thereby able to make some changes to myself so that I can grow spiritually. What better celebration, some of us, especially Petra ji, was saying we must celebrate that we completed 100 satsang. But what better celebration than being able to do this, share the learning, grow with each other, and also be able to change our own nature so that we become better and better and better. So one more story in addition to my own, right? I saw this series on Amazon Prime called Solos, quite interesting actually. And in one of those episodes, this guy called Tom, after learning that his time is limited on this earth, on the planet. Okay, so he learns that he's going through a terminal disease and his time in the planet is limited. He purchases the controversial, quote unquote, controversial product for his family. This product is a replica of his own self, replica of Tom. Not the real Tom, but a replica of Tom. Okay, and the replica of Tom, after he passes away, will take his place in his family so that the family does not miss him. That's the new product. That's why controversial product, right? So it's not Tom, but it is Tom in that sense. And as Tom is going through the quote unquote handing over process to this product Tom, the real Tom is handing over to the product Tom because he's going to go away, right? He also advises his replacement about changes that he would like to make on himself. What are the changes that he would like to undergo in order to become a better person, in order to evolve? See, it's only when you know you're going to die that you're willing to make changes to your own personality, to your own nature, right? So that's when he decided that I would like to change, and he is briefing his replacement. And in the episode, this is what happens. Tom passes away and it kind of gets over there. But I was wondering, as the episode ended, I couldn't help thinking to myself, what if Tom got another chance? What if the doctor told him that there is no trace of this terminal illness in you? You're completely cured. You're completely recovered. In fact, you know what? When we were in America this time, one of my brother's neighbors, he was detected with terminal cancer. And then he underwent some holistic treatment and all that. And lo and behold, the doctors actually told him that there is no trace of cancer in him. It was magical, right? So I was thinking as I was watching this, that what if Tom was told that, you are completely cured, go back, you don't need this product. So would Tom actually change his nature? Or would he go back like people have gone back to normal life after Corona? See, the 2 years of Corona, how different it was. And now it's almost like we have forgotten that time existed. So what would Tom do? That's the thought that I could not help having in my mind. See, through the teaching of the gunas, what Bhagavan is saying, that not just the teaching of the gunas, but their play, the various facets of gunas that we have seen across life, whether it is jnana, karma, karta, buddhi, dhriti, through all that, and others also, exhaustive teaching about our gunas, the threefold gunas that Bhagavan has spent time with us, helping us learn in the Bhagavad Gita. So what has he done? He is providing us an opportunity to change our gunas, right? To be able to evolve, to be able to grow. That is what we are learning. And if we pay a little bit more attention to what Bhagavan is teaching about the gunas, we will also figure out ways to discard tamas, to eschew or reduce or stay away from rajas, and to abide by sattva. The other teaching or the other learning for us in this is that by showing us the aspects that Bhagavan showed us, about action, he showed us the causes for action and the impulses to action. First, the karma chodana or the impulse to action, and then the karma sangraha or the causes for action. By showing these, Bhagavan shows that action itself, or let me put it the other way around, the self is above action. The self is free of gunas. Now, these two learnings are extremely important for a spiritual seeker, especially in let's say an advanced spiritual seeker. We have come to chapter 18, right? So we have traversed a lot of distance. So while the first learning is extremely critical for the seekers of Jivan Mukti. See, we've learned about Jivan Mukti, that while living in this planet, how can we be free? How can we attain liberation? So the first learning that I touched upon is very critical for people who want to become Jivan Mukta. And the second one is very critical for people who are pursuers of Videha Mukti. Videha Mukti is when you do not seek to come back for another birth. You attain complete salvation. And Tyaga or Sannyaasa will come about only if we understand our gunas and then leave the lower gunas to grasp the higher gunas. Remember when we talked about the definition of Sannyaasa, we said Sannyaasa is letting go of the lower and grasping the higher. So that is when it will happen. When we understand ourselves, when we understand our gunas, is when we will know what is it that we want to hold on to, what is it we want to let go, and what is it that is beyond, that is higher than where we are today, that we would like to grasp. At the end of the day, it is a process of continuous improvement, as modern psychologists have talked about, which is what Bhagavan also spoke in the Bhagavad Gita. Moksha Sannyasa Yoga is nothing but attaining moksha through sannyasa, through letting go and grasping. So after covering the threefold impellers, that the aspects that impel action, that is karma chodana, and the threefold basis of action or karma sangraha, Bhagavan covered the two aspects that provide fuel and force to karma chodana and karma sangraha. They were the buddhi and the dhriti. That is what we learnt in the last satsang. And buddhi is powered by jnana shakti, dhriti is powered by kriya shakti. And we saw that sattvika buddhi gives clarity, jnana, it comes through jnana. Rajasika buddhi causes confusion. Bhagavan calls it shamshaya. And tamasika buddhi arises from and also results in misunderstanding. It comes from misunderstanding and also leads to misunderstanding. Viparita. Sattvika dhriti is spiritual pursuit with moksha as the goal. Rajasika dhriti is samsaric pursuit, worldly goals, where artha, kama, and dharma are the goals. We have talked about purusharthas, artha purushartha, kama purushartha, and dharma purushartha. And tamasika dhriti is holding on to the five aspects that we studied about. Swapnam or false imaginations, not just the dream, false imagination, swapna, bhayam or fear, shokam or grief, vishadam or depression, and madam or conceit. And tamasika dhriti does not have any goal. There is no goal that is being pursued. But what is the overarching goal of any pursuit for human beings? That is attaining sukham, right? In the short run, pleasure; in the long run, happiness. So that let us see now. So we go on to verse 36 of the 18th chapter.
Sukham tvidanim trividam.
Sukham tvidanim trividham.
Shrinu me bharatarshava.
Shrinu me bharatarshava.
Abhyasad ramate yatra
Abhyasat ramate yatra
dukkhantam cha nigacchati
dukkhantam cha nigacchati.
Sukham tvidanim trividham shृणु me bharatarshava Abhyasad ramate yatra dukkhantam cha nigacchati.
Idanim. Bhagavan is saying Idanim. Idanim means now. Shrinu, listen. Me, from me. O Bharatarshabha. O best among the Bharatas. Bharatarshabha means the best among all the Bharatas. And what does he want Arjuna, Bharatarshabha to listen? He says, Trividham, the threefold division. Tu. Normally, tu stands for but. Here, threefold division of. Sukham, pleasure. Yatra, in which Ramate, one rejoices. Abhyasad, by long practice. Cha, and Nigacchati, attains. Dukkhantam, the end of pain. So Bhagavan is saying, now listen from me, O best of Bharatas, the threefold division of pleasure, in which one rejoices by long practice and attains the end of pain. Trividham Sukham, the threefold division of pleasure. See, it is in search of pleasure, when it is short term, when the focus is short term, and happiness when the focus is long term, that gives impetus to life. Life gets meaning from this search of happiness. Immeasurable effort is put in this pursuit of happiness. There is also a Hollywood movie by this name, Pursuit of Happiness. Very nice, one of my favorites. Okay, so the immeasurable, unbelievable amount of effort that is put for this pursuit of happiness. Still, the outcome or the happiness that or pleasure that one receives, the same measure is not something that everyone gets. Different people experience with pleasure and happiness is different. And when it is experienced, it is only a flash, especially when it is pleasure. It vanishes as suddenly as it came. It comes in, you experience it, you experience the joy or a little bit of happiness, and then it's gone, not there. In spite of this, the attempt to gain it goes on ceaselessly. So once it is gone, we try again. Hope sustains life. However, there are a few people who experience this in an increasing manner, which means they experience happiness, and then they experience increased happiness, and then they experience even more increased happiness, and then even more. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. Deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. In terms of size and span of time, and in terms of the depth that you feel it in. What is this reason? What is the cause of this kind of variation? Some people experience it in a way, some people experience it in a different way. The threefold division that is based on the nature of the pursuit. So we are pursuing, right? So all this is about pursuit, the pursuit of happiness. The threefold division that is based on the nature of pursuit. And the nature of pursuit is based on the nature of the person who is pursuing. That is what makes it different. And Bhagavan uses Bharatarshabha, foremost of the Bharatas. Why this kind of an addressing for Arjuna? One who is expected to be happy. Okay, Arjuna cannot afford to say, he was in the doldrums, right? He was in a completely depressed state. Bhagavan is telling him, Arjuna, I'm going to teach you Sukham. I'm going to teach you happiness. And you are the one who cannot afford to say that I'm depressed. Not only that, you are also expected to take responsibility for the Sukham of your subjects when you become the king in future. So not only are you expected to be happy, you are expected to keep your people happy. And he says, Abhyasad ramate yatra, in which one rejoices through constant practice. There is rejoice in the practice itself. So there is Sukham in the practice itself, by the way, right? So in the pursuit of pleasure, especially sensual pleasure, the pleasure holds you, okay, and then vanishes. And once it vanishes, one is constantly trying to find it again. Where did it go? You're searching for it. That is especially happening in the case of pleasure. It comes and goes, comes and goes, comes and goes. In the pursuit of happiness, sustained practice of the aspects that we spoke about, that provides sustained happiness and sustains the happiness also. So sustained practice, providing sustained happiness, like I said, over a period of time and in depth, and that then sustains the happiness also. That comes through abhyasa and reveling in that abhyasa. Abhyasad ramane yatra. There is a beautiful definition of abhyasa by Rishi Patanjali, one of the best. So he says, Satu dirgha kala nairantarya satkara asevita dridabhumi. Dirgha kala means for a long time, not something that you do and then leave it. Okay, it has to continue. Like we are almost in the end of Bhagavad Gita. What after this? Right? Dirgha kala. It doesn't mean one chapter of my life is over. No. You have to continue with the practice. How you will do, you have to figure out. How I will do, I have to figure out. Right? Like a lot of you have asked me whether we'll repeat the satsang. We'll have to figure out some way of continuing. So for a long time, in fact, spiritual pursuit is an entire lifetime pursuit. Nairantarya, without a break. Even when, quote unquote, we are taking a break from satsang, the practice should be pursued. The abhyasa should be kept up with in some manner or the other. Satkara, with devotion, with that single-pointed devotion to the higher. Asevita, when one does this, when one practices in this manner, Drida Bhumi, one attains that firmness. What Bhagavan had also referred to in Bhagavad Gita as Nishchala, that firmness. One attains that. That abhyasa in which one revels through practice. That which you hold on to initially and then it holds on to. First, we have to grasp it. And after some time, we'll find that the practice has grasped. It's like workout or exercise is most familiar. Initially, you don't want to get up. Who will get up in the morning? Let me avoid. Or I'm feeling lazy today. I'll not exercise. But after you exercise, you feel great. And after you exercise continuously, Dirgha Kala, Nairantarya, Satkara, when you do that, after that, if you don't exercise, you don't feel it. That kind of thing, which you first hold on to and later on it holds on to you. That is what reveling in that abhyasa means. And Bhagavan says, Dukkhantam cha nigacchati, attains the end of pain. This phrase implies end of pain forever. Okay, when Bhagavan says nigacchati, nigacchati iti nitaram gacchati, forever. That is moksha. When there is end of pain forever, that is moksha, that is liberation. Now, this particular phrase in this verse leads to interpretation of this verse in two ways. The first way is that the second line of this verse is part of the Satvika Sukham, where Bhagavan is going to talk about in the next verse. That is which leads to moksha, the Satvika Sukham. And the second interpretation is that Bhagavan is referring to constant practice by anybody, anyone, whether the person is tamasic, rajasic or sattvic. And whatever it may be, whether it is tamasic or rajasic, ultimately guides you on to sattvic and then to moksha. Or from wherever you are, you can also attain moksha. But typically we'll see that when the practice is there and the pursuit is there, the sattvika portion increases because we discard tamas, eschew rajas and abide by sattva. So these are the two ways this verse also gets interpreted. Now we move on to Satvika Sukha.
Yattadagre vishamiva
Yattadagre vishamiva
Pariname mritopamam
Pariname mritopanam
तत्सुखं सात्विकं प्रोक्तम्
तत्सुखं सात्विकं प्रोक्तम्
आत्मबुद्धिप्रसादजम्
आत्मबुद्धिप्रसादजम्
यत्तदग्रे विषमिव परिणामे मृतोपमम् तत्सुखं सात्विकं प्रोक्तम् आत्मबुद्धिप्रसादजम्
that, yat, which, vishamiva, like poison, visham, poison, eva, like poison, agre, in the beginning, pariname, in the end, amrutopamam, like nectar. Atma buddhi prasadajam, born from the serene state of mind which is absorbed in the self. So this sukham is born from that serene state of mind, which is absorbed in the self. That sukham, pleasure, proktam, is declared as satvik. So that Bhagavan is saying, that which is like poison at first, but then in the end is like nectar, born from the serene state of mind, absorbed in the self. That pleasure is declared to be satvika. That pleasure, tat sukham, which in the beginning, agre, is like visham, poison, vishamiva. This is because yoga requires strenuous effort. In the beginning, it's extremely difficult. Like when I practice Ashtanga yoga now, I struggle to balance. It's extremely difficult. It requires strenuous effort, but actually it doesn't. The key is to make it effortless. But it requires strenuous effort. Anything that initially requires strenuous effort and then becomes effortless, initially is like poison, and then after long practice, in the end, after abhyasa, in the end, parinama, is like amrita. And Bhagavan also says, Atma buddhi prasadajam, born out of the serene state of mind that is absorbed in the self. One who is absorbed in samsaric activities, okay, is completely devoted to gaining worldly pleasures or has worldly goals, whether it be artha, kama, dharma. Artha is, when you are seeking the pleasures that you need to live. Kama is desire, and dharma is goodwill. All these are relevant in the samsaric world. So that kind of a person is letting go of that, tyaga, and trying to, the letting go of that meaning the ephemeral pleasures, the temporary pleasures, and now is getting into sustained practice, abhyasa, of what? Of atma buddhi prasadajam, of getting a mind that is absorbed in that atman. So letting go of sensual pursuits, letting go of samsaric pursuits, and spending more and more time thinking about the Supreme Self within. Through abhyasa, detaching from the body, mind, and intellect, and attaching to Atma. Experiencing the glory of Atma through meditation. That kind of a buddhi, that buddhi which is absorbed in the Atma, is Atma buddhi, which is what Bhagavan is talking about. A buddhi absorbed in Atma is Atma buddhi. And such a buddhi, which is absorbed in the Atma, experiences equanimity, peace, and calm, and which is unprecedented. See, one of the things which I told you earlier was, one of the most difficult things is to think about God all the time. Ma manusmara yudhyacha, Bhagavan says, think about me all the time and do your duty. That's what he tells Arjuna. That is one of the most difficult things to do in life. It's easier to go to the Himalayas and, discard your robes and sit there and try and meditate. But do your duty, have your battles, do whatever you're doing, thinking about me, dedicating it to me. Ma manusmara. That is among the most difficult things. But when that buddhi is able to do that, when that buddhi is Atma buddhi, then that buddhi experiences that peace and that equanimity. That is prasada. Prasada, again, means benevolence. Prasada, so when you are absorbed, when the buddhi is absorbed in the self, obviously that's Bhagavan's prasada, the equanimity. Prasada also means equanimity. Prasada also means being poised in the face of extremities. That is also prasada. And jam means this is born out of what? Absorption in the self. Tat sukham, that kind of sukham, that pleasure or happiness, which comes from this kind of a state of mind, which is, being absorbed in the self and the equanimity that comes from it, that sends a sadhaka into raptures. Unbelievable, unlimited amount of happiness. The sadhana that started as a hard task is now culminated in supreme happiness. And such a joy is Satvikam. Now Bhagavan takes up Rajasika.
Vishayendriya samyogat.
Vishayendriya samyogat.
Yattadagre mritopamam.
Yattadagre mritopamam.
Pariname vishamiva.
Pariname vishamiva.
Tatsukam raja samsmritam.
Tatsukham raja samsmritam.
Vishayendriya samyogat. Yattadagre mritopamam. Pariname vishamiva. Tatsukam raja samsmritam.
Tatsukham, the pleasure, yet which arises, samyogad, from the contact of Vishayendriya, senses with their objects. Vishaya, object, Indriya, senses. The contact of the senses with the objects. Agre, at first. Amrutopamam is like nectar. Pariname, in the end. Vishamiva, like poison. Smritam is declared Rajasam as Rajasika. So Bhagavan is saying the pleasure which arises from the contact of senses with the object, with their respective sense objects, which is at first like nectar and then in the end like poison, is declared as Rajasika. See, in the previous one, the contact was with what? Atma. Here the contact is with what? The Vishaya. So earlier it was internal. Here it is external. Earlier it was the soul, the Atma that is within us. Now here it is external. Dwelling within and dwelling outside. Exploring, like we said in the beginning of the satsang, right? So like we Mars, what is it called, that rover or whatever it's called, to explore Mars. We launched exploration devices to explore unlimited universe. Similarly, we have to launch a quest within. That is Atma Buddhi. Here, we are talking about Rajasika, which is the Vishaya, Vishayendriya. Vishayendriya Samyogat, Bhagavan says. Vishaya is objects, Indriyas are the senses, Samyogat is the contact. Happiness that arises only when the senses are in contact with their respective object, sense object. So my tongue loves the taste of coffee. And when that tongue is in touch with that flavor and the taste, when the tongue is in touch with the taste of coffee, when the nose is in touch with the flavor of coffee, or the smell is in touch with the flavor of coffee, that is when that pleasure is there. After that, it's gone. Only when this contact is there. That kind of a pleasure is short-lived. Either the object goes away or the object ceases to exist. Sometimes when you love a flower, that flower will wither away and go. People wither away and go. So the object either goes away or it ceases to exist. Or the person, the sense itself, that either is happy with the contact and doesn't want anymore, or gets stressed by excessive contact. So both sides are variable in nature. Pleasures from such contacts are initially like nectar and then later on like poison. Agre mritopanam pariname vishameva. There is this beautiful mythological narration of the Samudra Manthan. We've all heard about the Samudra Manthan, right? It's in which the Devas and the Asuras are churning the ocean of life, which is symbolically presented as the ocean of milk. It's actually the ocean of life. The churning of the ocean of milk was an extensive process. The goal was to attain Amrit, to get the nectar. Mount Mandara was used as the churning rod, and Naga Vasuki, which is around Shiva's neck, the snake, the serpent rather, that was used as the rope. And it was obviously not easy at all. But the Devas and Asuras gave it their all, completely. Hard work. Extreme hard work for what? Nectar. The Amrit. Mandara, however, sank. Okay, and when Mandara sank, they could not churn. So they ran to Lord Vishnu to pray for his mercy. Bhagavan, in his extreme compassion, took the avatar of Kurma Avatara, and he held Mandara mountain up so that the churning could take place. So they are churning for the exhalation of life, right? That potion which is nectarine, that gives you limitless life. But also got a number of ratnas. I think we referred to it earlier. I don't remember very well. We may have referred to the ratnas. I think when we did Vibhuti Yoga, may have. Otherwise, we'll see sometime later. But what the Devas and especially the Asuras, because the story goes that initially the Asuras insisted that they'll hold the head of the serpent. And the Devas had to let go because tail was not considered very auspicious, right? But the snake started, the serpent started, Vasuki started spuming poisonous gases. And not only that, the aspect of churning, as much as it generated the ratnas, also generated this potent poison called halahala. This was not anticipated by the Asuras and the Devas. The terrified Asuras and the Devas, they ran to Lord Shiva. Vishnu was under the ocean. They ran to Lord Shiva. And Shiva, in his extreme grace, drank up all the poison. And that is why people worship Shiva as Nilakanta. So this mythological narration that shows that sensual pursuit of nectar leads only to poison. They were churning for nectar. What did they get? They got poison. It is only the immense grace of Bhagavan that ultimately gives the nectar. Tat sukham rajasam smritam. So when we are pursuing for sensual pleasures, that is called rajasika, which arises from the contact of the senses with their objects. Now we move to tamasam. Yadagre chanubandhe cha
Sukham mohanamaatmanaha Nidralasya
pramadottam tattamasamudahritam
Yadagre chanubandhe cha Sukham mohanamaatmanaha Nidralasya pramadottam tattamasamudahritam.
Sukham, pleasure. Yad, which. Agre, at first. Cha, and. Anubandhe, in the end. Mohanam, deludes. Atmanaha, the self. Uttam, through. Nidra, sleep. Alasya, indolence. Pramadaha, illusory existence. Tat, that. Udahritam is declared. Tamasam, tamasic. So Bhagavan says pleasure, which at first and in the end. So both in the beginning and in the end, which means throughout, deludes the self through sleep, indolence, and illusory existence. That kind of pleasure is declared as tamasic. Tat tamasam udahritam. That pleasure is tamasic. Mohanam atmanaha. That deludes the self. Actually, there is no pleasure. There is no sukham. There is no happiness. It is only imagined sukha. Imaginary happiness. In reality, there is no happiness. See, the supreme self cannot be deluded. However, the higher aspects of oneself, which help or which push us towards the spiritual pursuit, that make one participate in the spiritual pursuit, that is deluded. Yadagre chanu bandhe. In the beginning, one is deluded, thinking it is sukha. And later on, that whichever it is, whatever it was, not sukha really, that imaginary sukha, that deludes to think it is sukha. So like we said about abhyasa, right? Initially you grab hold of it and then abhyasa will grab hold of it. Here, initially the delusion, you are deluded to thinking it is sukha. Later on, that whatever it is will delude you, continue to delude you. That is how in the beginning, through, and in the end also. And where does this delusion come from? Where does it spring forth? Three aspects. Nidra. Nidra means sleep, but not the physiological sleep where you go into slumber. Not being able to apprehend reality. That kind of a sleep, which makes a person incapable of perceiving the supreme. So the person is asleep to reality. When you say, no, you are asleep to the facts. That kind of a sleep, right? This results in sense gratification being sought after at the physical level, at the body level. Alasya. Alasya also means lazy. In this case, it's referred to as, it means indolence. Indolence means lack of perception and judgment. One is not able to perceive what the sense organs are giving the feedback, and one is not able to make a judgment. What is good and what is not good is a confusion. That's not clear at all. That is alasya. Also, the capability or lack of capability to deal with the magnitude of problems that are there in real life. That kind of a capability is not there, because when the world is there, there will be issues. But the capability to deal with problems is not there. That is alasya. So small, you will see that even a lazy person, is generally quote unquote loafing around, they will tend to make small problems big. And the bigger problems are brushed under the carpet, quote unquote. So that kind of a lack of capability to have discerning, the lack of discerning capability, that is alasya. Pramada. Pramada is an illusory existence, make believe. That is what pramada is. This makes the person prone to errors. When you are in a make believe situation, obviously you will make errors. And not only make errors, there is this lack of heed. The person doesn't pay heed. There is heedlessness, especially to the higher calling. Who wants it? There's no heed. So when such a person, especially one who pays no heed to the higher, that kind of a person, one who has no perception or judgment and has no comprehension of reality, is sleeping through reality. That kind of a person seeks happiness. The person is only deluding to think that there is happiness. The higher within starts thinking that there is happiness and gets deluded. That's how the self gets deluded. In the beginning as well as in the end, and right through. Now Bhagavan concludes the topic of gunas. Okay, so much he has covered about gunas, which is so extent. I've emphasized this. There is no way I can emphasize more. You can keep emphasizing all through. The most important for us to focus and learn about our gunas and thereby improve, evolve. Human beings are privileged to be able to evolve. And the evolution best happens by knowing our own nature. Bhagavan concludes that topic in the next verse.
न तदस्ति पृथिव्यां वा
natadasti prithivyaam va
दिवि देवेषु वा पुनः
divi deveshu va punaha
सत्त्वं प्रकृतिजैर्मुक्तम्
sattvam prakritijer muktam
यदिभिः स्यात् त्रिभिर्गुणैः
yadebhis syat tribhir gunaihi
न तदस्ति पृथिव्यां वा दिवि देवेषु वा पुनः सत्त्वं प्रकृतिजैर्मुक्तं यदिभिः स्यात् त्रिभिर्गुणैः
tad there asti is na no sattvam being prithivyam on earth va or where did I go va or punaha again divi in heaven deveshu among the devas yad which syat is muktam free abhi from free from tribir gunaihi the threefold nature prakriti jay born prakriti jaihi means born from prakriti born of prakriti. So Bhagavan is saying there is no being on earth or again in the heavens among the devas. Devas are the heavenly beings, which is free from the threefold nature born of prakriti. So the threefold nature of sattva, rajas and tamas, they are born of prakriti. They come from prakriti. And there is no being on earth or in the heavens that is free from the gunas. This implies that all beings are in bondage till they transcend the gunas. Right? We are all bound. We are all in bondage. The sadhaka, the spiritual seeker, has to struggle hard to overcome this nature. That abhyasa is extremely important. And even if it is painful in the beginning, have that faith that it will be amritam in the end. What is this to overcome nature? What is that? Again, discarding tamas, eschewing rajas, and abiding by sattva. And then transcending all of them, becoming a gunatita, what we saw in chapter 14. And at the same time, so this is, we have all understood very well, okay? And at the same time, we also know that no two beings, okay, me and you, none of us, right? We respond or react to the world outside in the same fashion. All of us respond to any given situation in varying manners, varying ways. Why does that happen? That is because the proportion of these three gunas, which is within us, the sattva, rajas and tamas, that influence each of us is different at different times. So the combination, the proportion of this mixture of sattva, rajas, tamas in me is different now and it will be different tomorrow. Maybe it will be different 1 hour from now. Why maybe? It will be. And it is different in all of us. Every being is possessed by the three gunas. I can't say that I don't have tamas. I can't say that I don't have sattva. Maybe it's a minuscule portion, but it is there. All of us have all three. Every being has all three. So how does one then transcend the gunas and go beyond samsara? See, this is a very crucial portion. We should understand this well. Earlier, Bhagavan had said, Asanga Shastrena Dridena Chitva. This was in the beginning of chapter 15, Purushottama Yoga, in the very beginning, right? He said, with a strong instrument, strong weapon, an axe, right? Weapon of what? A sharpened weapon of non-attachment. Asanga Shastrena. With the weapon, strong, sharpened weapon of non-attachment, cut this firmly rooted samsaric tree of life. So by non-attachment, one cuts the samsara and then goes beyond, transcends beyond. Non-attachment. Non-attachment comes from dispassion. Dispassion comes from a pure mind, Chitta Shuddhi. Chitta Shuddhi comes from Karma Yoga. We have seen all of this, right? Now, is Karma Yoga for everyone? Is it for all? Or is it only for a qualified few? Remember, we also talked about Sadhana Chatushtayam. One who goes through Sadhana Chatushtayam is the qualified person. So, is it only for a qualified few? Is liberation for all, or is it only for a privileged few? Bhagavan clearly states that it is for all. And that too, regardless of one's state, regardless of one's composition of the gunas, sattva, rajas, tamas. So Bhagavan has just made a categorical statement that no being is free of gunas, and all three gunas are present. He will be making another categorical statement that a human being attains perfection by being devoted to duty, to one's duty, not somebody else's duty, to one's own duty. And he'll also make another categorical statement that one who has attained perfection, you can get perfection by being devoted to duty, and the one who has attained perfection can attain the state of Brahman, which is what? Liberation. So anyone, this is the path for liberation for anybody and everybody, all human beings. Be devoted to your duty and become perfect, and then attain the state of Brahman. Now, this is also very critical in our day-to-day life to recognize what our duty is, by the way. If we make the wrong choice, it is like what I had just told the other day, right? You do an excellent job of climbing up the wrong ladder. So it is important to know how to find out what one's duty is. So what is one's duty and how does one find out what it is? So Bhagavan now refers to the categorization of human beings, one of the most misunderstood aspects of Sanatana Dharma and of our Bharata culture. See, we categorize human beings all the time, right? Wherever we see around us, there is categorization. Man, woman, tall, short, white, black, brown, right? We have rich, poor, American, African, all kinds of... when Petra came today, my mother was like, are you American? So we classify all people. Director, peon, okay? Master, servant. So it's human nature to classify people. These are all categorization or classifications that divide people to help some of them attain materialistic goals. Maybe not all, only some of them. Categorization with the goal to attain liberation. Okay, that is what is different from the normal categorization in what we are going to study. Categorization with the goal to attain liberation is done at the level of the mind. Manaha. Such categorization is called Varna. Varna means color of the mind. The direct translation of Varna in Sanskrit is color, but it is color of the mind. There is one more categorization, by the way, which is called ashrama. Ashrama is categorization based on the age of the person. Okay, but that is not relevant here. That we'll talk sometime later in some other context. Of relevance here is Varna. And Varna is universal category. All human beings everywhere. Well-defined characteristics. We have seen, right, how beautifully gunas are defined. We have seen that. So beautifully, well-defined, well-detailed out characteristics. Determine the type of 4 classes that human beings are divided, or rather classified as. Divided into is the wrong word. I should use the word classified as. This is a classification. And this is based on human nature. Based on composition of the gunas in the mind. So the dominant guna, like we said, every guna is present in everyone. But one guna is predominant. That is the primary. Followed by the secondary and then the tertiary. So there are 3 levels of this composition. Primary, secondary and tertiary. And they are not determined by birth. They are not determined by heredity. These are purely the nature, the human nature. And we will see shortly, you can make out human nature. So even if a person is born in one environment, the nature may be something else completely. So it is purely based on human nature. So the Brahmanas, their primary guna is sattvic, sattva. Secondary is rajas and tertiary is tamas. The Kshatriyas, the primary is rajas, the secondary is sattva and tertiary is tamas. Vaishyas, the primary is rajas, the secondary, like the Kshatriyas, they also had primary rajas. In this case, the secondary is tamas, whereas in the case of Kshatriyas, the secondary was sattva and tertiary is sattva. And in Shudras, primary is tamas, secondary rajas and tertiary sattva. And all these classifications are required in our life, and you can't even help it, they are there. We'll come to that in a bit. Okay. Now Bhagavan describes the duties of the four classes of people based on their nature, which is Swabhava. We will see that in the next verse.
Brahmana Kshatriya Visham
Brahmana Kshatriya Visham
Shudranam cha parantapa
Shudranam cha parantapa
Karmani pravibhaktani
Karmani pravibhaktani
Swabhava prabhavai gunaihi
Svabhava prabhavair gunaihi
Brahmana Kshatriya Visham Shudranam cha parantapa Karmani pravibhaktani Swabhava prabhavai gunaihi.
Parantapa, O scorcher of foes. So Bhagavan is addressing Arjuna as the scorcher of enemies. O Parantapa, Karmani, the duties, Anam, of, the duties of Brahmana, the Brahmana, Kshatriya, the Kshatriya, Visham, Visham is the Vaishya, Cha, and of Shudra, the Shudra. So we say Brahmananam, Kshatriyanam, Vishananam and Shudranam. It's to be understood that Shudranam is, the last portion of that is connected with all the other three also. So the duties of these, Pravibhaktani, they are distributed. Gunaihi, according to the gunas. Prabhavaihi, born of Swabhava, their nature. So Bhagavan is saying, O scorcher of foes, the duties of Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra are distributed according to the gunas born of their nature. Parantapa, scorcher of foes. So why is Bhagavan bringing this name here? Very interesting, to tell Arjuna that you are going to kill, see, scorcher of foes, his foes are standing in battle in Kurukshetra. So you're going to kill all these people of various types of gunas, of various types of varna. Is that what he is saying? No, he is not saying that. Various categories of people you have to eliminate, Arjuna. Scorcher of internal foe is also Parantapa. So aspects within that are preventing Arjuna from carrying out his duty. Aspects within us that prevent us from carrying out our duties. Those are the ones that we need to eliminate. Carrying out our duty will lead to perfection. Perfection will lead to moksha. So if you are not going to carry out our duties, then we will not attain perfection. So aspects that prevent us from carrying out our duties need to be eliminated. O Parantapa. Then he says Swabhava. Swabhava is the nature or Prakriti. At the cosmic level, Prakriti is the Maya Shakti of Ishvara. We have studied this extensively in detail, okay? And Prakriti is consisted or constituted of the three gunas. At the individual level, the nature of a person or Swabhava is born from the three gunas. Prabhavaihi gunaihi. And Karmani Pravibhaktani. Bhagavan says that the duties of classes of people are distributed according to the gunas born out of their nature. See, the varna or the classification of the human beings, this is based on the color texture of the mind. That is based on the swabhava or the nature. From the swabhava of a person, the nature of a person, or the karma of a person, which is the action of a person, right? We can make out the varna of the person. So the way the person behaves and the person acts, the way the person's nature is and the person acts, you can make out what category this person falls under. Of these two, the swabhava is more subtle and it is not easy to comprehend. Karma, on the other hand, is action. It's gross. It is easy to see what the person has done. And the varna of the person based on karma can be easily found out. See, however, one crucial aspect to remember is that sometimes, especially with evolved people, with all people also, but especially people who are evolved, okay, in the spiritual path that we have talked about, or in leadership path, in the material world, whichever path, okay, where the evolution is more. Okay, where if I'm a great tennis player, sometimes I'll play a deceptive shot just to fool the opponent. It may not be the best shot. It is just done to make the opponent think that my game has gone weak. I may even lose one game just to make the opponent believe something else. So sometimes people take action with a purpose. You know, in the corporate world, they call this as Edward de Bono, 6 thinking hats. You must read about that. Very interesting analogy, okay? There he talks about facts, optimism, various kinds of risk, okay, creativity. So if I am a leader wearing the factual hat, my behavior will be different, my actions will be different. If I am wearing the risk hat, my action will be different as a, let us say, a CEO. So Sri Krishna himself is a great example, by the way, of a person who appeared different in various contexts. For example, when he builds a new capital in Dwarka, a lot of people interpret this as trying to avoid battle with Jarasandha. Jarasandha was the one who was constantly attacking Mathura. With a larger goal in mind, Krishna goes and builds a new capital by the ocean. Jarasandha is actually fooled to thinking that Krishna is defeated and dead. A lot of people interpret that avoiding of battle. They think it is avoiding of battle and interpret it as what? Tamasic. Right? Arjuna was in tamasic frame of mind, right? When he said, I want to go. I want to leave my responsibility. In the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, what does Krishna do? He blasts Arjuna. He completely not scolds him, he blasts him. He calls him impotent. Completely blasts him. Abuses him. Very Rajasic in temperament. That is also something which people can assume that Krishna is Rajasic. He is wearing that quote-unquote hat at that time. So it is very important that when in our day-to-day life, concluding about the nature of a person and responding based on our conclusion, remember it may be false conclusion. We should do this with extreme care and responsibility. So now, if people are categorized in such a manner, then does it mean that Bhagavan is making some people great and some people small? That quote-unquote impartiality? Why God me? Why have you chosen me for this unfair way of me having to live my life? We hear that all the time, right? So is God making some people great and making some people small? And the great people have a smoother path and the small people have tougher path. See, fundamentally, creation is impossible without differentiation. Tall means nothing if there was no short. Going back to sameness, where everything is same, is going back to destruction. Would human wants destruction? Would any human being say, oh, let the planet and let the creation be destroyed? Nobody would want that. So going back to sameness is destruction. It has to be, creation has to be differentiated. internal makeup as well as external circumstance of human beings must be as varied as creation itself. All of us have a different internal makeup or permutation combination of gunas, and our circumstances are also very, very different. Prakriti by itself is what we say samya avastha. It's state of equilibrium. And in that state of equilibrium, sattva, rajas, tamas are in equilibrium. When this equilibrium is disturbed, creation comes forth. We saw the creative process earlier in detail, okay? So we will not repeat that now. If there were no differentiation in these created elements, including the human beings, there will be nothing. There won't be anything at all. So in this reality, this is reality. In the reality, what is the beauty of Bhagavan's teaching now? In fact, the concluding teaching of Bhagavad Gita. So the beauty of Bhagavan's concluding teaching is how any human being, whoever it may be, irrespective of caste, creed, sex, religion, nationality, height, color, race, nothing, whoever it may be, any human being, irrespective of the person's classification based on the gunas, whether the person has 90% sattva. So in a way you can say that when we say predominant sattva, right? Primary, secondary, tertiary. Primary, you can say 85 or 80, 15, 5. Okay. When you go through the revision, you can keep that in your mind. A primary sattvic person will have 80% sattva, 15% rajas, 5% tamas. And a Shudra will have 80% tamas, 15% rajas, and 5% sattva. So the irrespective of this quote unquote mixture, okay, whatever it may be, irrespective whether the person is a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, whoever it may be, that person can evolve into perfection and then into liberation. Infinite is the scope for evolution. That is the beauty of Bhagavan's teaching. Now Bhagavan will take up the distinctiveness of each of these varnas, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra, as per the duty, Swadharma. That's how we learn what the duty of these classifications have to be. We shall see that in the next sense. Hari Om, Shri Krishna.
We'll repeat today's verses.
Yes.
Chapter 18, 36 to 41. Sukham tvidanim trividam shrinu me bharatashabha abhyasadramate yatra dukkhantam cha nigacchati yattadagre vishamiva pariname mritupamam tatsukam satvikam proktam atma buddhi prasadajam Vishayendriya samyogat yattadagre mritopamam pariname vishamiva tatsukam rajasam smritam yadagre janubandhe cha sukam mohanamatmanaha nidralasya pramadottam tattamasamudahritam na tadasti prithivyam va Divi Devishu va punaha sattvam prakriti jed muktam yadebhisya tribir gunaihi brahmana kshatriya visham shudranam cha parantapa karmani pravibhaktani svabhava prabhavai gunaihi Om Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityor ma amritam gamaya Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Hari Om, thank you. Any thoughts, comments, or questions?
I actually have two questions, and of which one I think I answered it myself, but anyway, I'll ask you. The first question that I have here is, you mentioned being devoted to duty leads to being perfect. I feel that being perfect or making anything in a certain perfect manner itself is an obsession.
Is obsession.
It's an obsession to be perfect or do things perfectly, or the whole thing that it has to be in a certain way. It's an obsession. Now, where is the liberation here?
So let me try and understand the thought behind the question. So you're saying that doing your duty leads to perfection, and perfection leads to liberation, but perfection is obsession. So where is liberation? Where is liberation? See, perfection does not have, so there are firstly, perfection does not have to be obsession. Perfection can be systematic approach. See, Bhagavan in chapter 3 talks about samachara. Okay, pursuing what you are doing. When your karma, when you devote your karma to the higher ideal, when karma becomes karma yoga, when there is Ishvara Arpana Buddhi and Prasada Buddhi, okay, that leads to an approach which is methodical, which is devoted to something larger, which is not done with selfish purpose. And when one pursues one's duty in this manner, then there is no obsession. Obsession comes from from the need to fulfill selfish desires. Obsession does not come from striving for perfection. So when you remove that need to fulfill selfish desires, then the striving for perfection happens without obsessing over it. Asanga shastrena dridena chitva. That's what Bhagavan says, right? With that element of cutting away the attachment. When that obsession is what? Obsession is excessive attachment. So Bhagavan says, forget about excessive attachment, cut away the attachment itself. Asanga shastrena dridena chitva. So when you don't have that attachment, obsession is not there. The pursuit is smooth. Pursuit is effortless. That's why we said, what seems extremely strenuous in beginning, later on becomes very effortless with that abhyasa. And that is what leads to perfection. In fact, with obsession, you will not get perfection. It will not happen.
Okay. So the second question, I think I'm repeating myself several times, and I really don't know why. I somehow, I feel that I end up at the same point every time I ask you this question. So there is this statement that you mentioned. Non-attachment comes from dispassion. Okay. And later, as I was listening, and I made my point saying that doing the duty and dedicating the outcome to the higher self itself is dispassion. Right? I mean, though there is a lot of, the question that I actually had was, is this specific for specific relationships only? Or is it applicable for all relationships and things? But then I narrowed it down to only a relationship between a mother and a child. How can there be a non-attachment? How can there be a dispassion when there is so much of, I would say, love and a lot of other things in that, a lot of elements in that relationship? But I understand this point, which you had earlier mentioned it as well, but it seems a little too, I don't know what to say, difficult or I don't know. I think I would take away that necessary element of a very motherly love if I become non-attached.
So see, when we talk about relationships, okay, attachment comes from expectation. Expectation comes from either what you want for yourself from the relationship or what you want for the other person from the relationship. What you want for the other person from the relationship, not what the other person wants from the relationship. Okay. So when now both these, whether it is a question of what I want from the relationship or whether what the other person wants, what I want for the other person from the relationship, both of these are what? They are being attached to an outcome. So when Bhagavan talks about attachment, it is attachment to an outcome. So when you get attached to the outcome, because there is a selfish expectation, that is where the problem comes. When there is no attachment to outcome, where I don't expect I'm having this relationship for the beauty of the relationship. It's not like I want something out of it. At the same time, also, I'm not saying that I want the other person to become like that. These are the lackings in that other person which I need to go away. All of us do this in our day-to-day life, by the way. That's why when I began the Satsang, I said it's so hard. It's extremely hard. It seems easier to leave all this and go and pursue a Sannyaasa course, which is what I started off the Satsang, right? So how can you continue the equation without having the expectation of the outcome of that equation? Then there will be that peace in that relationship, the thriving in that relationship.
Is it a human nature to kind of have set and unset expectation? It seems very difficult for me to even grasp this concept.
Is it human nature to have what kind of expectation?
Set and unset expectations.
Sorry?
Expectations which are stated and unstated.
Stated and unsaid and unsaid, yeah. It's nature for some humans, may not be for everyone. Yeah, some people state it. Some people are much more expressive and state whatever they expect. Some people they don't state. They hold it to themselves. Some people think that the other person should understand.
Actually, I'm finding this extremely difficult, and I think I've asked you several times. I find myself repeating, but then I'm not getting it.
So see, the way to make it is difficult. It's not easy. Okay, I have also said that it is difficult, even in this satsang earlier also. So we can't hoodwink ourselves to thinking that it is not difficult. It is difficult. So let's first acknowledge that, right? But once you acknowledge that, it shouldn't bother us. Difficult doesn't mean that it should trouble. If we are able to quote a kind of a Buddhist way of approach, right? Live in the moment. If you are able to do that, once that moment is gone, then you are not that. And in Bhagavad Gita study, again going back to that cutting the attachment. See, detached involvement. The science of detached involvement is where you don't get attached to the outcome, but at the same time you're doing what you're supposed to do. In that case, you will be able to. So Krishna was able to convey a very hard message to Arjuna. Arjuna was also able to understand that hard message of Krishna. And Krishna did not mince his words. Krishna was very rajasic in temperament. He was angry. He yelled at Arjuna. Okay. But he was not. And then he moved back. It was that moment. And Arjuna, in that moment, he could relate to what Krishna was saying, although in that moment he didn't understand. We all went through Bhagavad Gita from the beginning, right? In chapter 1 or chapter 2 beginning, when Krishna blasts Arjuna, Arjuna has not understood Karma Yoga, Arjuna has not understood Bhakti, Arjuna has not understood Jnana, he has not understood all that. He has not understood Vairagya, he has not understood Asanga Shastrena. All that is going to come. But what did Arjuna? Krishna was obviously more knowledgeable. Krishna was obviously, more evolved. So he was able to wear a hat and carry out a purposeful action, that of grabbing Arjuna's attention. Arjuna, on the other hand, believed in Krishna's alignment. Arjuna himself, by the way, I'm saying Arjuna believed in Krishna's alignment. Not that, hey, I am devoted to Lord. At that stage, Arjuna had actually ordered Krishna to take the Ratham to the middle of the battlefield. Much later, Krishna, it dawns on Arjuna the power of Bhagavan. At that stage, he just has faith. Because of the background of Krishna's and Arjuna's life together. That is the faith which he chose Krishna over Krishna's warriors. The entire army, he said, you please give to Kauravas. You come with me. So that faith that Arjuna had, that is what he exercised at that time. So see the beauty of this. There is stress. There is intense, stress in the environment. Krishna is blasting Arjuna. Arjuna is in a demoralized state, right? But Krishna has the sense of purpose, or he has worn the hat of the teacher, and Arjuna has worn the hat of the faithful follower. And that's how in verse 7 of chapter 2, he is able to say that, I am your student. Please tell me what I should do. Huh? Shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam. I am your shishya. Please tell me decisively what I should do. So I think I would say the trick lies in being in the moment and then growing and having the larger picture, having the bigger picture, having the higher ideal in mind, and not getting drowned in that particular stressful moment. The mistake we do is we get drowned in that particular stressful moment. And when we do that, we lose the bigger picture. We do not see the purpose behind whatever expression or action it may be.
Thank you.
Any other thought? So Petra is saying something. Jaikar, I'll come to your points after that. Can you be a little louder?
The percentage of the gunas in oneself. If I think I have 98% of rajas, is it possible to change it? And yes, would it be a little bit not natural, like changing my true nature?
So the question is that, is it possible to change the percentage of guna composition that we have, and will it not be changing my original nature? It's absolutely possible, and the purpose is to change it. See, that's what I meant when I used the phrase discard tamas. Tamas must be discarded, because tamas is alasya, laziness, indolence. It is all the elements which do not help progress, right? They are retarding in nature. They pull you back from progress. Rajas is something which helps you progress, but more materially rather than spiritually. So if the goal is material progress, then fine, maximize rajas. Tamas should be discarded. Okay, tamas should be not even 5, it should be 1%. And from 1, it should go to 0 if possible. It is not possible, but it should be minuscule, 0.0001. And if the goal is material, if my goal is artha kama dharma, then maximize rajas and have sattva as secondary, tamas as minimum tertiary. If my goal is moksha, if my goal is spiritual evolution, even jivan mukti, we don't even have to bother about videha mukti of rebirth and all. Even in this life, I want to experience the deep and everlasting happiness. If that is the goal, then you maximize sattva, make rajas secondary, and discard tamas. So that should be done. And yes, it is possible. Through what? Abhyasa. You are yogini, you know abhyasa more than anyone else.
You give me another answer.
So Jaikar is saying a few thoughts, what's right and wrong. Permutation and combination of gunas within oneself varies with circumstances and or time. That's very true. You have a different quote unquote permutation combination at different times. That's possible. But the challenges or the abhyasa should be to make it more and more sattva, secondary rajas and tertiary tamas. Then the second point you're saying is initial combination is determined by prior karma we are born with and combo and environment. Yeah, absolutely. We discussed this earlier, right? The prarabdha karma, the philosophy of karma we have discussed extensively in the WhatsApp group as well as in the satsang. So I'll not go into that now. You come in with what is your prarabdha. Prarabdha ko to bhugatna padta hai. You have to exhaust prarabdha. Okay, and what you do today, the agami, that helps building future sanchita karma. So yes, that is true. And then that will determine the future guna of the human being. Based on circumstances, this combination evolves with the final goal being absolutely. That's true. And the last point you're saying is we cannot get rid of rajas and tamas in Kali Yuga. Actually, we cannot get rid of rajas and tamas in any yuga. Every person has some minuscule portion of the others. You know, one may have 99% sattva in Satyuga, but there will be some 99.99% sattva. But then be a little bit rajas, there will be a little bit tamas, even in Satyuga. So it is impossible, it is always there in any yuga. But yes, in Satyuga, obviously the sattvic aspects will be much more dominant. In Kali Yuga, the rajas and tamas are much more dominant. That is true. Any other thought? Okay, if nothing else, thank you, Hari Om, and we will meet next Saturday. Thank you all, Hari Om.